I wanted to bring out for this, but I could have brought a ton more, but had to be a bit, yeah.
Three total ones.
I know. It'd be interesting to see how good they are.
Yeah, I mean, you got the old.
Four tigers.
Okay. Because they might.
Tons more stuff. Yeah.
It's still not normal.
Yeah, of course. Well, the thing is, with all the Chinese manufacturers hate each other. So, of course, they're going to release something that's, you know, similar. They all absolutely will cut each other's throats as quick as look at you. They hate each other. So,
I'm just great, Nathan. He started the live stream, so I just great, Nathan.
Okay. Great. Yeah, but the dude who's helping Take-On is the guy called Dave Hobbs, who has access to everything that was at Aberdeen that's been moved to Fort Hood. I think it's where it's moved. Fort Benning, sorry. Although I don't think it's called Benning anymore. They changed it again. So he's got access to everything. And so that's why you'll see a lot of American stuff. And anything German that they've got, they'll Take-On will release at some point because they've got access to them, basically. So, and that's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. And like a really nice, the M48's really nice, and the Sergeant York is really nice.
I'll be interested to see.
There's Zimmerit. Yeah. I'm going to talk, obviously, a lot about Zimmerit stuff. Okay. I can get started, yeah, absolutely.
So I can introduce
Go for it.
That's my job.
Go for it.
I need the sheet. I can't remember what's what.
That's right. Sorry.
Morning, everyone. Sorry about the delayed start. Just had to do the Remembrance Day and we'll change up a microphone. But now it's told by Peter it's the Sandwire.
Oh,
Don't get capital T, the Sandwire. Going to present on detailing armoured vehicles. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. I'm sure it'll be an interesting thing. As soon as I get a microphone, I'm going to sit back and watch it.
No worries.
So thanks, Sam.
So yeah, look, it's actually, thanks for having me and thanks for coming along. It's detailing armoured vehicles, but really I'm focusing on putty, so which sounds really vague, and it kind of is, but so I'm probably going to talk about three major things, I guess. One is Zimmerit on German tanks, and then stowage on everything, whatever, and tarps as well, and then welds. So if you guys have got any questions about anything as I'm going, where you can't hear what I'm saying, or if I'm speaking too quickly, which I tend to do, just sing out, and obviously, yeah, happy to answer any questions. So a little bit about me. Some of you might know me. I've been doing armour for 40-ish years, which I'm so youthful. How could I possibly be doing it for such a long period of time? But really, I focus mostly on 35 scale tanks. I have ventured out of my lane somewhat recently, building aircraft and sculpting figures, which is a nightmare with putty. But mostly aircraft armour is my one thing. So, do you have any preference to what you wanted to see first? Zimmerit, tarps, welds, anything Zimmerit? All right. So, does everyone know what Zimmerit is? Well, I've heard of Zimmerit before. It's a paste, a concrete type paste that was applied to German armour, not in the field, despite what people say. It was applied at the factories, German armour factories, between September 43 and September 44. And then post September 44, basically, yeah, it wasn't applied. It wasn't a specific date. So you see some Panthers in the Ardennes, for example, that had Zimmerit on the turret, but nothing on the hull. And then some King Tigers in Czechoslovakia that same deal, had Zimmerit on the turret, but not on the hull. So there was a bit of a mismatch, which is kind of fun to model. So in regards to Zimmerit, look, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can buy a rifle models kit that has the Zimmerit moulded on for a Tiger, for example, and it's actually pretty good, surprisingly good. So it kind of cuts out having to fart around with putty, because it can be a bit of a messy type thing. So this is my Dragon Tiger 1. Let's put it here so that the camera can see it. I think we're live, which is frightening. So Dragon kit doesn't come with Zimmerit on it. And I've applied it to this, and I won't hand it around because it is ridiculously fragile. But what I thought I'd do is I've got a rifled Tiger that doesn't have Zimmerit. And I thought I'd just give a quick demo on various putties and then how to apply it and how to texture it. So Tigers are weird in that they had different patterns on the turret and on the hull mostly. So on the turrets they had quite a coarse pattern, and on the hulls they had quite a smooth pattern. So as you can imagine, trying to match those patterns is a real challenge. Which brings me to the tools. So there's a bunch of different Zimmerit tools that you can buy off, on the internet. There are various. Show that to the camera. Show it to you guys. That's a line raw Zimmerit roller. So it's got a little brass roller on the end with a ridged pattern on it. That's probably the best one I've found. And of course, Murphy's Law of modelling being what it is, it's no longer available. So scour eBay, they sometimes pop up and they're cheap as, you get 2 in a pack, and they're really, really cheap, and they're excellent. So the real Zimmerit was applied with a trowel to the tank, and there's no photographic evidence as yet been found as to how it was applied in the factory. But you can see trowel marks in the putty, and in the final version of it, there are roller marks. So there's a pattern repeated in the Zimmerit that shows that they had a roller of some kind to ridge the Zimmerit. And so the Zimmerit was ridged to provide a standoff distance for magnetic mines to not stick to the steel of the tank. So it didn't need to be 1.5 inches thick across the whole length of the vehicle, which would have added tons to the weight. But if the ridges were there, it's enough to keep the magnetic mines off.
Was it touched up in the field at all?
No.
Okay.
No, not that again, there's no photographic evidence of that. So the process, it's got fuel and benzene mixed in with it, and it's quite volatile when it's non-cured. And it was applied to the vehicle, and then they used blow torches to cure it. And then they put a skim layer on, they blow torched that, and then put a final ridge layer over the top of it. So there's no evidence of it being applied in the field. So lots of people will say, yeah, I know that was applied in the field. It absolutely wasn't. So
It wasn't even touched up in the field. It's like once it chipped off.
it chipped off, it was off. Yeah. So to match the Tiger pattern on the turret and the hull, I've torn my hair out looking at any number of different things to try and find the right tool. So again, it's I have no idea whose brand that is. It might be Trumpeter's one, steel roller. It's a little bit bigger than the I probably can't see it. It's a little bit bigger than the line raw one. The best one I've found, and it's just a little brass knurled thing, really hard to see. There's one for the camera. It comes out of a Venetian blind lock mechanism that you can buy off eBay, and it's that. And you just pop the hinge out of it, it's that. So you pop the hinge out of it, grab the little roller, and that's perfect for the larger pattern on the turrets of Tigers. So, and so look, you can use a bunch of different tools. As an example, that's a section of razor saw. So if you were going to use, and we'll get to the putties in a second, if you were going to use a Tamiya type putty or a squadron green putty, you might use a rake type tool to make your Zimmerit pattern, which doesn't quite look as accurate as a rolled type pattern, but if that's all you can get your hands on, that works perfectly well as well. So in regards to putties, there's a million different epoxy putties on the market. I find epoxy putty best for doing this sort of stuff. So look, Tamiya QuickType is fantastic. The Tamiya putties, as you can imagine, everything about Tamiya just works super well. It's readily available everywhere. The only drama with the QuickType is it dries really quickly. So your window to manipulate the putty is quite short. You get once you start mixing it together, you get about 20 minutes of it being really nice and pliable. and then it starts hardening, and so that isn't great for doing Zimmerit. Tamiya also make a smooth type putty. That's better for doing Zimmerit because it's got a much longer curing time. But I find these putties they've got a plasticizer in them, which is excellent, but they're a bit hard to, here we go, microphone.
Tell Mike. Couch.
Cheers. This is going to be really awkward. Hello?
There we go.
Oh, that's better.
Too loud?
Sorry guys, you guys, I'll make sign language for the guys at the back. Sorry. Hello.
Everyone hear that all right?
Did you hear that? Oh, awesome. Do you want me to start again? No, I won't. So look, yeah, Tamiya putty is really great. It's got a plasticizer in the putty, which is awesome for doing other types of putty use, but not so great for Zimmerit. It makes it a bit hard to manipulate. The one that I tend to use most is Magic Sculpt. There's actually two brands of Magic Sculpt. There's one that you can only get in the UK, and it's a brand called Sealmaster, and shipping to Australia is insane. It's like $44 to ship it to Australia for a small tub. This stuff is now released in Australia by Green Stuff World, so anywhere you can buy Green Stuff World putty or tools and figures and whatever, this is the best stuff. And look, the most recent one that I've picked up to try is Infinity Putty, which I think is just Magic Sculpt. Infinity Putty is excellent. Again, it comes in two parts, an A and a B, like putties. Hard to keep it for the camera. You mix the two together and then apply it. So, does anyone have any questions so far on anything I've gone through?
In the cuts here, you don't recommend that?
What's that?
You got the cut?
I don't. Milliput becomes very grainy, and if you apply any water to it, it kind of falls apart. And you can blend and smooth with water, but I find that it just doesn't also stick to the model that well. So, and that's something I'll talk about very quickly as well, is getting the putty that doesn't have a solvent in it, like Tamiya putty has a solvent in it. These epoxy putties don't have a solvent, so it can not want to stick to the model. So what I tend to do is, these are just some mules I knocked up. These are Ryefield Tiger 1, and probably can't see it. I've actually textured the surface with Tamiya glue and a brush. So just roughed up the surface just to make the putty stick a little bit better, sort of thing. So I'll crack on and apply some, I'll mix up some putty. I didn't check this before I came, so hopefully it's still good. There we go. So it's real simple. I just take a fingerful of putty. It's just part A and part B. It's pretty good. And of course, it's hardened on me a little bit. Has anyone used epoxy putty before with modelling at all for various things? Just a milliput? Yeah. Look, there's a bunch of sort of newer, better stuff. Here I'm just warming it up, so just makes it easier to blend together. So. Yeah. It just it's stuff that's easier to use than milliput, So. Yeah. Which I think is the green stuff rebranded with HLE.
All this stuff seems
What's that?
all this stuff seems pretty good.
Yeah, it does. It dries like plastic, and you can sand it. Yeah. So look, two blobs roughly the same. If I squeeze them a little bit, roughly the same, and then it's just a matter of mixing them together, which invariably gets all over your hands. I brought gloves, but gloves are for sissies. So sorry, this is really riveting stuff watching me mix putty, but it's not something that I could pre-mix before. Yeah. It can just take longer to dry, longer to cure, yeah. If you don't mix enough hardener in, so one is the putty and one is the hardener, and it can just take a little bit longer I've never had it not go off, not cure. It could just take, you know, a little bit longer. So yeah, it does pay to kind of pay attention to get them, you know, roughly the same size. So yeah, so there you go. So you end up with a ball of putty. I know it's riveting viewing for everyone. Sorry, ball of putty, and I just I keep it between the fingers to keep it sticky and keep it warm. That sounds really weird. And just take a smaller ball. And I've got a really cheap tool off Amazon, just a pointy spatula type thing. And I literally I start by just smushing it out with my hand. I'll get that on camera. So just smush it out as best you can. And in the comfort of my home, I usually lick the putty, but I realise that's gross. And you don't need to watch me doing that. So I brought water this time. And so you just wet the tool, try and keep the plastic dry. Because if the plastic gets wet, the putty won't stick to it. So I keep the plastic, I'm juggling 50 things here, and I just wet the tool and then just spread the putty out super thin. And it's just a matter of smushing the putty out. So, and you can get it amazingly thin. This putty, and that's where it's probably better than Milliput, is these putties that have sort of a plasticizer in them, you can get them wafer thin. So you can almost see the colour of the plastic through the putty. And that's how you know. Yeah, it's exactly right. When you touch it with water, it just comes apart, yeah. So I'm just literally smoothing it out as best as you can. It doesn't need to be super smooth, but it needs to be thin. So that's helping for the online, we can say. And then occasionally I just clean off the tool with a bit of paper and then re-wet it, because it does accumulate a bit of putty on the tool. And then I'm just smoothing it out more and more and more, and you can spread it out a really long way. And I find a ball roughly that size will do a whole turret, because you can really get it super, super thin. And the thinner the better. And I think that's where most people kind of fall down with applying Zimmerit this way, is that they leave the putty too thick. And then it just looks crap. Like, it looks really clunky and nasty. So again, you get to the bit where you've got it as thin as you like, and I just apply the next blob of putty and smush it. It's, again, look at that. And then just thin it out, and it blends in. And look, the real thing, you know, the real tigers and the real tanks that had the Zimmerit on, there's photos online where you can see guys' handprints in the putty, and you can see knee prints where they've leaned over one bit of the hull to do the turret, and there's a round dint where the guy's knee is in the Zimmerit. So you kind of can be a little bit rough, and that adds a bit of personality to the model as well, which is kind of fun. So, yeah. Yeah.
Is it just on the horizontal surface? Or the
Vertical surfaces, yeah.
So it wasn't on the top of it?
It wasn't, but then Tigers had it on the front glacis plate, which is a almost horizontal surface, yeah. So, and that's really tricky to see in photos. It's filled up with dust and dirt and whatever. And so you look at, you know, photos of Tigers at the time, and it's tough to see in photos, but it is there.
So that,
this section just here,
yep.
had Zimmerit on that. Yeah. So basically anywhere that a man could reach the tank and jam a magnetic mine onto the tank is where the Zimmerit was. The irony being the Germans were the only ones to use magnetic mines. Russians and no one else used magnetic mines, so just, yeah, hopeless. So yeah, look, I won't labour this, but yeah. So look, once you've got you know, a fair bit of coverage on the turret, I'll just use this as an example. Pardon me. I just I'll get a brush or the back end of something that's round. Again, just wet it and just roll it over the surface just to smooth it out and make it a little bit flatter. Just to take any ridges out of it, and it just helps the finished product look that tiny bit neater. You remember that as rough as it might have been in real life, this is 35 times smaller than real life, so you kind of want it to be as neat as you possibly can. So once you've got your surface looking, you know, nice and thin, as much putty on there as you want to put on there, grab your Zimmerit tool. In this case, I'm using the line or roller, and the little wheel spins quite well. Again, I just wet it, and if I was home, I would lick it, make it weird. And then it's just a matter of rolling the tool over the surface and getting the ridges that you want. And literally, sometimes it sticks, and that's why you just jam it back in the water. And if it does stick, like I just went to do that then, and it's left a big divot across the surface. So you grab your tool again and just smooth it out, and you can roll straight over the top. Like it's super simple. So yeah, straight over the top and just keep rolling. So
Zimmerit mainly on the tanks.
yeah, it was. There's a few photos around of half tracks with Zimmerit on the side. I'm not convinced that it's Zimmerit. I think it might be mud cam. Yeah, because there's lots of photos with German tanks with mud camo on them. I don't know, Australian Army put mud cam on Leopards and Abrams and all sorts of stuff. So it looks like thick mud cam to me because there's handprints all in it and stuff. So I'm not convinced, and it would add tons to a half track as well. So it generally was Sturmgeschütz, so Stugs, Panzer III, Panzer IV, Panther and Tiger all had Zimmerit. Yeah. So look, in the couple of minutes we've been chatting, that's the Zimmerit basically done on that section of the turret, and then it's just a matter of letting it dry, letting it cure. So I will just move on to do a different section of the tank, and then when you get to detail, just again apply the putty around the detail as best you can, and it might sound a little bit daunting to sort of apply, putty to the model and do lots of stuff. The beauty of using epoxy putties for doing Zimmerit is, if you don't like it, you just literally get a knife blade and wait for it to dry if you want, and it just chips straight off, or you can just scrape it straight off and start again. So whereas if you were using a Tamiya putty, with a solvent in it, it eats into the plastic, and so you've got to scrape it off, let the putty dry, and then sand it smooth again to start. So that's why I recommend using epoxy putties to do Zimmerit. So to apply Zimmerit to a model like this might take a couple of nights. So I usually do it the last thing before I go to bed if I'm modelling. So I can just leave it overnight. It'll be cured by the morning. And sometimes it's a bit rough, it overlaps the top or whatever. Wait for it to dry and just trim it straight off. So
Is there a story there on tools? Was it applied around the tools?
So yeah, if there was the tools would be removed from the brackets, and the Zimmerit goes around the brackets. Yeah, so it pretty much went around everything. Yeah, so it was even like, for example, on the Tiger 1, it was even behind the stowage bin. So the stowage bin was unbolted or not fitted at that stage. Zimmerit applied, and then the bin went over the top. So not the muffler area. Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, and under fenders, it was all Zimmerited as well because the fenders would come off. So yeah, so I would be applying Zimmerit to a model at this stage. Yeah. So and again, this has got a row of bosses on the side that would mount the fenders, and it's just a matter of putting the putty around the bosses and smoothing it out. So which you can see in the broken off. Unfortunately, the broken off section in the back here. And that's what I've done. Just there's Zimmerit all around the bosses and stuff. So you can see the black CA where it's broken off. So
in terms of the patterns,
yep.
You get
Absolutely, yeah. So different factories, especially with Panthers, different factories apply different Zimmerit patterns. And then with like Tigers, they're horizontally ridged, whereas Panthers are the other way, vertically ridged. Yeah. And then also Panthers had like a smooth pattern with sort of wavy pattern through it. And then also Panthers had and Panzer IVs, no, not Panzer IVs, Panthers had like a grid scored into the Zimmerit as well, so that if it got a hit but didn't penetrate the tank, it would just spool off and break off at the squares and not shed the whole tank. So in fact, to do that, that's what that tool is. So it's just 3 pins sandwiched inside some plastic sheet, plastic card. And so apply the Zimmerit, do all that sort of stuff, and then just rake it with that to get your anti-spall grid. Yeah. So
like ball mounts.
Yeah.
You just get a.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Have I got one? There's Hearns Hobbies in Melbourne, did I bring it with me? Hearns Hobbies in Melbourne do these quite handy tools that they sell as just miscellaneous tools. It's just a black plastic rod, if you like, with a pointy tip on that end, and it's got a flat screwdriver head on this end, and that's perfect for doing that sort of ridged pattern around ball mounts and around vision ports and that sort of stuff. So, and actually on a Brumbar, which is another German tank, I did the whole Zimmerit pattern with this because the Zimmerit was a very different pattern than normal Panzer IVs, and sort of needed to be a Z shape drawn in it as I was doing it, and that's what that tool's perfect for. So yeah, so that's Zimmerit in a very small nutshell. I'm just looking at the time. Your question? Yeah, super easy. Yeah, so I allow it to dry, allow it to cure, and then did I bring a knife blade? Yeah, I'll show you here. Like literally, it's because it doesn't with epoxy putty. There's no adhesive or solvent element to it, so you can literally just stick your knife blade behind the putty and just chip it. Try to do it without my good glasses on, and it just chips straight. You can chip it straight off. Like it's really simple to chip off. So you probably can't just see, but this tank in real life, the one that I've depicted, has got a couple of shell hits in the front here. So the whole front section is missing Zimmerit. So I applied it as per normal and then just chipped it off once it was dry, you know. So it chips off super easy, yeah. So I thought next I would talk about something a bit more fun than Zimmerit, and it applies to all armour modelling, if you like, and that is doing stowage and tarps. So I've got my M10 tank destroyer here that's got loads of stowage on the turret, which is kind of happy you guys can see it. Welcome to come up the front if you want to have a look as well. The stowage is mostly resin stowage from Legends, which is, you know, available everywhere sort of thing. It's always a bit crap in that it doesn't sit well on the model. You know, there's gaps. If you were to just stick a bedroll on a side of a tank, there's always gaps behind it and stuff. And that's what, again, what epoxy putty is fantastic for, because you just grab your stowage that's got a flat back on it, apply a big glob of epoxy putty behind it, stick it on your model, and then a bit of water and a brush and blend it all in, and all of a sudden it looks like the stowage is moulded exactly to the side of the tank, which it would be anyway. All soft stowage is moulded directly to the tank. So exactly, yeah, exactly right. So and on this this tank, I've put a bunch of sandbags on the front, as you can see there, and that was just epoxy putty, again, you know, just making sandbags and stuff. But what I didn't do, which is what I thought I would quickly show here, is you think of a sandbag, you know, it's a giant bag of sand, and then there's always the sort of the top where they've tied it off. I haven't done any of the tied off sections there, and I thought very quickly, and this is probably a bit small and close to show necessarily, but adding that sort of makes it look that little bit better. They look like just blobs of putty at the moment. They don't look like a sandbag. So literally to fix that, you take just a tiny section, a tiny little bit of putty, that's probably a bit too much even, and I just take the top off because it still comes apart, and I just apply it to where there would be the end of the sandbag, where they've tied it off, and I just goop it on, and sorry camera, there you go, goop it on, and then I've got these rubber brushes, so it's like a paintbrush, but instead of having bristles, it's just a rubber tip. So I've got a pointy one and a flat one, and there's a whole bunch which I use for the figure painting. So I'll take the pointy one, again, just wet it a little bit, and then I'm making something that looks like a wilted flower, if you like. So just the open end of a sandbag, so it's just blended in a little bit. Sorry, camera guys. Smush it, and then make it look like an open end of a sandbag. And that takes about 1 second to do. And just blend it in. I don't know if that can be seen. And it takes literally a second to do, and it looks like, actually that doesn't look quite like that, but yeah, it just looks like an open-ended sandbag then, or you know, the filler neck of a sandbag, if you like. And it's just a matter of going around and applying a couple more of that. And it just turns the sandbags from looking like blobs of chewing gum into actual sandbags. So, and again, I've done this so that the sandbags are on the top part of the hull and then also on the bottom part of the hull, and they sort of fit together. So it was just a matter of building the bottom ones first, letting them dry, then putting the top of the hull on, building the top part of the sandbags, and then they come apart and it's ease of painting and that sort of stuff. So, and again, it's just a matter of quickly sculpting. And if it's something doesn't turn out the way you want it, it's really easy. I use the spatula again and just pull it straight off, and it comes straight off until it's cured. So, which is pretty handy. So, and look, probably my favourite thing to do with epoxy putty is to make tarps. So, tarps, there's one on the back of here you go, one on the back. It's actually an air recognition flag, jerry can, here on the back. So, really simple thing to do. I've seen this kind of thing online where folks make tarps and they look like giant thick blankets, and it kind of always looks a bit crap. So making tarps with putty is really easy. Think of bread, kneading bread and sort of doing it that way. So talcum powder. So when you roll out bread with a rolling pin, you use flour. Talcum powder is the best thing for doing this. So again, I use a bit of evergreen. That's 60 thou evergreen. Because there's no cuts in it. So when you're rolling it out, if you've got cuts all over your chopping board, you roll it out thin, your putty's going to have all weird artifacts in it. So again, I just squish the putty nice and thin. And again, this is magic sculpt. Just squish it thin with your hands. And I've got some big, whatever that is, 1 centimetre brass tube, which is my rolling pin, effectively. And so just into the talcum powder, and then a bit of talcum powder on your tube as well. And it's just a matter of rolling it out super thin. And again, you'd be amazed how thin you can get it. So it just keeps, because of the plasticizer in the putty, it won't come apart. Whereas milliput, if you were doing it, would come apart with this amount of sort of torture, I guess. The blue stuff or the green stuff? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's hard to see, but actually on the underneath the yellow putty is green stuff. Yeah. So that was the first layer, and then I put that's Tamir putty over the top. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so with the stowage that's on the side of the M10, I added straps to the stowage from this method. So again, I just leave it for a few minutes to harden up, and then just get a knife and cut very thin strips to make straps and that sort of stuff. So just after a couple of minutes of rolling, got lovely fettuccine pasta sheets. So it's ridiculously thin. You can see how thin it is. You can see the light through it. And I mean, that doesn't look like a blanket. Doesn't look like a tarp. It's just a shape. So knife blade, and I just cut it square, and I've got feedback. So okay. So that's roughly the shape you want. Just it doesn't really matter at this stage. I've got flour. I've got talcum powder all over my hands, which is good because as soon as you touch it normally, you get fingerprints in it. So normally I would wear gloves for this, but just for the sake of this discussion. So it's super light and super thin, and so to apply it to the model, I literally just throw it on there, and I use a brush or use one of the sculpting tools, and then just shape it to how you want it to look. So I want the blanket to sit inside the back of the M10, so I'm just a bit of water to help it stick because it won't stick otherwise. Go back and then just, come on. There we go. And then just shape it and get it to exactly where you want it. And I just use my fingers to help smush it down. And, a bit hard to see, and I apologise that it's so small, but that's how quick it is to do blankets and stowage on tanks. Like it's really, oh yeah, you can see, I forgot that there was a screen there. So yeah, so that's, you know, really, really simple to do. And it might seem really simple, but it's just, I guess it's practice. So, and this stuff's cheap to buy and use, so you can practice and just, if it doesn't work, chuck it out, mix up another lot of putty.
Good to use for like scenes and things.
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to cover off was welds. So, when you do your offcuts with your putty, there's always little sections like this, which is perfect for cutting up and making your seat belts or your rifle straps or that sort of stuff. So, what I tend to do is also just grab the offcuts and stuff them into crevices and corners on the tanks. It looks like a jumper or it looks like a pair of socks or something, and it just adds to that little bit of extra stowage. So again, I'll just grab that next bit and just stuff it into the next sort of nook and cranny. Real simple sort of stuff. Maybe I should do it on camera. And because again, there's no adhesive element to the putty, it'll dry in position that you want it to dry in. And if you wanted to paint it separately afterwards, you just pop your knife under it and pop it off, and it'll keep the shape, so you can paint it separately if you wanted to, and then just glue it straight back onto the bottom once it's dried. It works really well. So, and that's how I did the all the stowage on the back of the M10 is just you know, Zimmerit putty, thin, rolled out super thin, and then added to the model like this. And probably the last thing I wanted to cover off, covered in stuff here. The last thing I wanted to cover off was welds on tanks. So welds are, again, kind of a really quick and easy way to enhance your model. And for this one, I'm going to use Zimmerit Quick Type. You get to watch me mix putty again. So, so I apologise for that in advance. Again, Zimmerit putty comes in two separate things, like most epoxy putties. And I'm just hacking off a couple of quick sections. Chat amongst yourselves while I do this. Because I've run out. I used all the putty that I'd mixed up already, you know, making the tarps. Both are equally good, absolutely, yeah. So to me, a putty can be quite sticky, which is really good when you want to do welds. So yeah, it's handy for doing that. So just mix this up really quickly.
How well does that Zimmerit putty
No, I've got little drawers on my desk, and it sits in a dark drawer, and it's fine. I usually keep it in the box as well, and that's years old. You know? I find that Magic Sculpt goes a bit weird. It's gone a bit sort of oily. It's actually not oily. It looks yuck, but it works perfectly fine. And the Zimmerit stuff keeps really well, so it's really good. So for welds, I've picked, just to demonstrate, that's Zimmerit's Jag Tiger. It's a lovely, lovely kit. But around the superstructure here, and I did it for the camera as well, around the superstructure there, they forgot to add all the welds in. So thanks to Zimmerit, that's awesome. But doing welds is, again, it's super easy. There's a bunch of different ways you can add weld detail. I'll go through the tools as I go, but probably I don't know if anyone's seen Night Shift on YouTube. Uses 2 bits of plastic. I used to do it the old way of rolling it on the desk and making a little sausage out of, you know, putty. No, I just copied his tutorials completely, and so he uses 2 bits of plastic and gets a tiny little bit of putty, which is great, and then just a bit of water. And again, it's Zimmerit putty, so it doesn't come apart with water. And he just gets it, makes a little sausage, and he just, of course, it doesn't roll on me. And he rolls the 2 bits of plastic together, and he gets, is that showing up on the screen? It is. And he gets a really fine, very fine sausage of putty, which you can see there, which is really, and it's very consistent in its thickness as well, which is what you want. So once you've got your section of putty, it's as simple as laying it laying it on the model where your gap is. Where's the tool? Someone's stolen the tool. That's good. So I use the sticky thing, the plastic stick, and I just make sure it's in the groove where I want it to sit. And then it's just a matter of smushing it in. I put water in there, unfortunately. I just realised that I put water in there, so it doesn't want to stick. But again, I'll just smush it in. Come on. It doesn't need to be super neat at this stage because you're just filling the void with putty. And then snip that bit off at the end. And then for texturing it, I've got that's a Tamiya pin vise with a 0.8mm drill bit, but reversed, so it's the back blunt end for doing welds. And it's just a matter of texturing the putty with. Again, this is really coarse, just so it can be seen in the footage. And just a matter of texturing the putty with the. It's not working. Texturing the putty with your tool, basically getting the weld right. So I'm just doing it with this because it's not sticking, it's being a pain. You could do, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit pointy. You can snap the tip off, or if you had an older scalpel blade with your tip was broken, you could snap a little bit of it off because you don't want it to be too pointy. You want it to, effectively, you want it to look like stacked dollars or C's stacked on top of each other when you do it. Again, depending on the weld. So those sort of stacked C type welds are good for some welds, but then on Jag Tigers, for example, they were multiple pass welds that ran sort of vertically next to each other, sort of thing. So again, that's hyper nerdy, but it's depending on what vehicle you're depicting is depending on what type of weld pattern you want to put on there. So, and that's what this sort of little tool with its little Phillips, so it's a flat head, is great for doing those sort of multiple pass welds because you're just doing little ridges next to itself, really super close. So yeah, look, once your putty is not wet, which unfortunately it is in this at the moment, and it's fighting me the whole way. Yep. And it's just a matter of texturing it with your tool. So and that is the the easy part, if you like. And once you get your texture right, so it's now working, which is really good. You can then go in, and it's as rough as you like. I go in with a blade and just trim the excess off. Because the act of pushing the putty around with your tool, whichever tool you end up using, it always pushes putty out to the side. So I just go in and trim it with a scalpel blade, and then I get a brush with a bit of water. Once it's, give it 10 minutes or however long you like, and just blend it with a bit of water, just so that it blends a little bit in with the plastic that you've stuck it to. And then it's a matter of letting that dry and moving on to the next section. So one extra little bit, I guess, with welds is that German armour is all interlocked. It's got all big sort of cutouts on the side. To me, it usually put a weld in it, but it's not very good. And it's just a matter of getting a little scribing tool and cutting out your welds. Yeah, thanks. And scribing out the plastic, removing some material, and then replacing it with putty. And that way you're getting all of your welds to be exactly the same consistency and size and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of it for my demo. Does anyone have any more questions? Probably talked ad nauseum at you for 45 minutes. So,
what do you use for texture? Is it the epoxy?
This stuff? Yeah, I use it. This mixed with Tamiya glue. Yeah. Just in a little, I use a stubby, a beer cap, and just mixed in with that and then brushed on. Yeah, and then people tend to overdo the texture on tanks, I think. So even the Russian stuff, it was rough, but it wasn't concrete, so I always sand it back a little bit as well, just to knock the sort of the real rough edges off it, sort of thing. And that stuff's perfect for it, because it's got solvent in it, so it'll really stick to the model well. Yeah. I buy cheap brushes and and just cut them down or use them whatever, and then they get nasty, you chuck them out. It doesn't matter. So that's it. Thank you everyone for coming along. Thanks for your questions, and I hope some of this has helped.
Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. And my foot has gone completely to sleep.
Unfortunately, I missed most of it.
Oh yeah. No worries. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, yes.
Didn't you sell your own?
Oh, this guy.
With the Zimmerit,
Yeah.
like for this pattern,
Yeah.
you roll it, vertically down.
Yeah.
Those ridges that's in between
Yeah.
the patterns, you want to keep them as small as possible, or
Yeah. You're doing it so that the roller is effectively right next to the previous ridge.
next to the previous ones.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want to create a line.
Gap between them.
Or gap line.
Yeah, I just do them as close as they can, just so that they kind of almost are touching.
Yeah.
And with the turret one, it's overlapped, so they rolled it. And I think what they did was they then rolled the ridges again. So with that little tool,
Yeah.
I roll it once, and then you just roll over the top of it again, and it gives you the little extra ridge on top of the ridge. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's hyper nerdy detail about it, but it's kind of it's great to be able to get it as accurate as possible. Yeah.
And then this tool, I've seen that online.
I bought it on spec, just thinking it might be really good. It doesn't work that well.
Okay.
Yeah, the metal ones seem to be the way to go. Yeah, it's just yeah. I'll quickly pack up because the next guys will be desperate to come in. So. So that was really rough.
Yeah.
It's not super neat.
Get the idea.
Just curious.
Yeah.
I see the fuel jerry can rack you got.
Yes.
How'd you bend the styrene? You
Just
heat it or
no,
just
just,
straight bend it?
Just I've got a pair of flat pliers.
Okay.
And just bent it with flat pliers.
And it stays?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't mean to jinx you.
Yeah, no. It's all good. I made such a mess. Oh well. Who was that? No worries.
Have you got any top on display, like your finished
I
model?
do. There's a few out there.
Good.
M18?
M18 Hellcat, yeah. The Panther 4 with its turret turned to one side in AFEs.
Okay.
It's 5 aircraft.
Sweet. What did you do?
No worries.
On your overseas trip,
Yeah.
I sent a comment, but obviously parting too hard.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all good, man. That Panther that was there on display had that hidden whole side. Was it a Panther or was it a King? Sure, it was. I just want to know, did that penetrate the side, or was that just out of curiosity?
Which one again? Sorry.
It was outside, it was an outdoor display. User around it.
Oh, the real one?
Yeah, the real one. Yeah, sorry, the real one. Yeah, did that, out
not
of curiosity, I just thought whether, the next tanky.
I'm not sure.
No, it's not, it's all good.
I think it's a bazooka round.
Yeah, no, it was out of curiosity. I said, I wonder if that actually penetrated. Well, not that there was much on the side, but wouldn't go through.
It was a second SS Panther that was knocked out outside of the town.
Okay, yeah, and I just kept it there, which was
And they kept it there. No.
cool.
All right. I'm here.
I think the one of the reasons I was about the putty method.
Yeah.
I use it really
Okay.
and rolling it thin.
It doesn't want to play. It's a pain. We'll get these back together. There we go. Like I bought one.
Seemed to go all right.
Yeah.
Missed the
How are you
start.
doing?
Yeah,
I've got
good.
something for you.
What do you
No worries. I've got dry sprockets.
Yeah. I was going to remind you, and then I thought you got so much on your plate. Yeah, thank you.
My foot went to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I can't feel my foot. I look down and the ankle is just going.
Oh, wow. Do you do much speaking for work or anything?
A little bit. Well, I had that. Did you sit through that?
I missed the first, like, half of it. So,
I could feel myself just talking too fast.
yeah.
It's just,
I have to do it through work, and I always over-prepare. Like, I do webinars and stuff, and I've always got, like, 3 hours of info for, like, an hour, and then I find myself rushing. It's bloody hard.
it's tough, isn't it?
What are the toe clasps on this one? Are they those? They're 3D, aren't they? I mean, what are they? Where'd they come from? Sorry, the tool clamps.
Yeah, look at they're black. They're T-Rex.
T-Rex, yeah. They're nice.
I should make that at some point. Hey?
Yeah.
I broke the feet off in the trip up. Damn it!
What's next? Is Chris doing a quiz? I made the mistake of going to the swap and still I got stuck in the moss shed.
Get anything?
It's like they're all in there. A bunch of junk.
I've just got two bottlenecks.
Yeah. Well, I already cleared him out the other week.
Oh, okay. There's more then.